Dr. Kim Sage. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I am so glad you're here. I have been off for the past week and I'm really excited to be back. And I want you to know that I read through so many comments and it was just super inspiring, and it makes me feel like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, and I hope and believe that it is helpful to you. So I'm so glad to see you again. Please feel free to continue to share with each other and connect. I think that's so important. If you're new here, also please consider subscribing and checking that little box, the bell, and that way you'll get notified when I post new videos. I would love for you to be a part of this community. And if you are also new, please check out my links down below on the online courses I've created, especially around these topics of having parents who are physically and or mentally or emotionally struggling in some way, or they struggled in some way, and it had a significant impact upon you and how it plays out in your adult life and relationships today. Today's topic and the next sort of several videos are going to go into this idea around how these childhoods impact our lives. And just a quick check here to let you know that I have a new kitten and she is whipping around my house right now. So she may jump up while I'm talking. I'm just going to keep going. Her name is Coco and she is about 9-10 weeks old. So you might see me get a little distracted, but hopefully not too distracted. Okay, so what I want to talk about really and share, I kept thinking about this last week, how can I be helpful? There are so many great creators and videos and, you know, all of these topics around what is this or what is that. I do want to share those, but I feel like there's a lot of videos like that too. And so I want to make sure that you're, you know, getting your time's worth when you're coming to this channel in a way that you think, okay, like that made sense and it can help my life. So one of the things I find myself saying to patients a lot of the time, as I do specialize in working with patients who had parents who were often, you know, really limited in some way. They were borderline or narcissistic, extremely immature, extremely wounded from their own trauma, whatever it is. These are parents who consistently struggle to provide certain types of parenting and attunement and responsiveness. And one of the things I've really noticed, especially with kids, or kids I should say, kids who were raised by now adults with a borderline or narcissistic type parent, is we often talk about splitting, and that is something that people who have disorders like BPD and NPD tend to do, where basically they kind of split between all good and all bad. And so you are all good or all bad. It's the cycle of devaluation and idealization, and they even do it in therapy, right? You're the best therapist ever, you're the worst therapist. You're the best child ever, you're the worst child ever. They have a hard time holding that gray area inside. And what I've noticed is that as their children, and I was also raised by parents like this, we tend to do the same thing. Now, I'm not saying we necessarily have these disorders, but I've noticed that we tend to split in that we are all good or all bad. And frankly, even more so, I tend to see that we have internalized deep inside, if you peel back the layers, that there's something deeply wrong with us and we are all bad. And so it's always our fault. If our kids struggle, our partners struggle, we take all of the blame, even when they're adults. And we have our jobs, right? We're the worst employee, we're not smart enough, we're stupid. And so all of this is really common in people that have a combination of both anxious and avoidant attachment behaviors, especially if their parents really struggled. And so we can see these types of behaviors where, number one, things are always our fault, no matter what, because we've learned that as a result of their splitting, we split. And so we have a hard time seeing the gray area in life. And I would say that the majority of life is a gray area. So many things you can look at from the lens of, well, this might seem wrong, but under these circumstances, does it make sense? Is it justifiable, right? So that's the first thing. So we tend to say everything is all our fault or all someone else's fault. There's no middle ground, but we often really cycle back to, yeah, but it's still my fault most. Number two, that someone else, as I'm saying, is usually me. And so we learned that, you know, blame and negative emotions from our parents belonged to us. And so because we can't have our caregivers when we're little, they can't be bad. It must be us. If I was a better child, if I was smarter, if I tried harder. And so the fault really lies in our campground most of the time. And so the way it shows up from these parents, this sort of splitting behavior, is they'll say, well, you always do this, or you never, loved me, or you never listened to what I said. And that always and never get deeply ingrained in our psyche. And so we take that on too, right? It's always our fault. It's never their fault, things like that. Additionally, these parents will often use bad names to label us and blame and shame us. And so they say we are these bad things. So that further buys us into that belief system that everything is good or bad, right or wrong, all or nothing. And there is something wrong with us because we are, stupid, called terrible names, ridiculed, condescended to, whatever it is, on the receiving end of contempt when they're really angry. Now, quickly, if they also had a more borderline presentation and it was untreated, it might be that you also at times felt really close and really loved and really connected when it was just the two of you or when you were serving their needs. That's especially true, I think, more so for borderline than narcissism. And so that gets really confusing because it's not always bad. And so if you're someone who says, yeah, I do relate to that, please check out the many videos I've made on this topic because I do believe it's very confusing. The fifth thing we do is deep down, we do believe these things, as I'm saying. And so it makes it easy to split into the camp of, yeah, it is our fault. And because we're doing that, we want to try to avoid feeling like it's our fault so we can get stuck in a cycle of perfectionism. That is that inner critic that wants to protect us from it being our fault, even though deep down inside we believe that. And so basically the splitting creates and reinforces our own perfectionism, as if I just try hard enough or love them enough or forgive them enough or do it right, that I won't be the all bad. I will be the all good, which everybody longs to be good. No one longs to be the bad person in a situation. And so as a result of that, and then the parenting, especially if these parents were rageful or, eggshell type parents, highly unpredictable and highly inconsistent, which is very common, that creates anxiety and hypervigilance in us. And so we're always over-reading every situation, looking for where we're going to be the bad person. And basically that plays out in ourselves and relationships, that devaluation, right? It's always showing up. And so then we have this negative self-talk to prevent us from being devalued or devaluing ourselves. And so we'll say things like, you're so stupid. What were you thinking, right? What's wrong with you? Because we're living in that all good or all bad dynamic. And we lean towards all bad. And lastly, that when you have these kind of toxic parents or partners, you often choose as a result, right? So you're often trying to heal from these childhoods, but you often end up choosing partners who reinforce this behavior. That partner or parent has also learned that you are highly responsive to criticism and shame, and that it's really easy to get you to believe that you're wrong or bad. And so they have a lot of power over you all of the time because you're desperately trying to avoid being bad and you're so responsive to criticism, they start to learn that they can shape and shift how you respond when they come at you in a way that says, yeah, it is your fault. And so you often stay stuck in that cycle. So the beliefs you want to challenge, I would say, that are really important if you really want to work on this are, number one, to work on recognizing when you are splitting and to challenge yourself that there is actually a gray area in life. Number two, to remember that decisions can actually be changed. You can change your mind. You can change perspectives. And so even if you decided you were all wrong or at fault, you can learn to say, wait a minute, that's not actually true. That to look at feelings and behaviors and thoughts as things that exist like on a rainbow, on a spectrum, right? That they're all shades of gray. They're all shades of color. And so, if right over here is wrong and over here is right, you're kind of going to the extremes. And so the question is to look at what is all the in-between area, right? So to challenge that and know that you're limiting yourself if it's all or nothing. And this even applies to the relationship with a parent. It's either no contact or not changing anything. And the truth is there's a lot of stuff that you can try to do in the middle before you either stay in the exact same relationship with a parent or partner or completely walk away and go no contact. And so remember that, you need to sometimes remove yourself from those situations to change the power dynamic, to change this process of splitting, that there are ways to set the tone with the relationship without playing by the same rules. And then remember that when you do all this stuff, if you don't challenge this whole right or wrong, good or bad, all or nothing belief system, it keeps you in the caretaker role. Because that's the role you were in childhood. That is the one you will stay in your adult life and relationships, because you feel there are no other choices. It is only all or nothing. It is only all your fault or not, or someone else's fault. And that, even if you're blaming someone else and you split with them, you're not looking at the wide range of possibilities between the two of you and the reciprocal relationship between people and what happens. So what you can do is begin to challenge yourself when you do that. Try to notice and observe when you're doing it. Ask yourself to literally write down on a spectrum from good or bad or right or wrong, and challenge yourself, what are the key points in the middle of this situation or belief system? To ask yourself, well, do I want to change anything about this? If I was going to change something, what would it be? I often love to say to myself, what would a loving parent say to me about this situation? So if I went to a loving parent and I said, I'm having this issue at work, and I know it's because I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough. What would a loving internalized mother, and that's part of my other course I have, check that out down below too, what would she or he, or that energy, that being, what would they say? Would they say, yeah, you're right, you aren't smart enough? No, a loving parent would say, okay, let's look at that. Where do you feel like you're not, growing enough, or where do you need to learn more, and what belongs to you and what doesn't belong to you, and how can you love yourself more and accept yourself, that you're not perfect and that's okay, but that doesn't make you good or bad, right? So that kind of talk. And there's a whole process to doing that, but that's the idea. That's that reparenting you can search if you want to learn more about. And then to challenge your perfectionism, to deal and really challenge with it, right? To challenge this idea that you must be perfect to be in the all good camp. This whole idea of gray area, I keep saying it, is so important. And to notice when you're talking to yourself harshly, or making things have to be perfect in order to avoid being the bad, good or bad, and how that hurts you. And then to look at how you deal with those feelings in your body. What does it feel like when you're splitting with yourself, when you're giving yourself these ultimatums or all good or all bad? Go look at the trauma type videos I've made. Are you going into fight or flight? Your body has learned as a result to respond, your nervous system, to these types of parents, and when they split on you. And then you can take that on. And so you might live in a very chronically anxious, hypervigilant state. And so you want to do some work on regulating your nervous system, recognizing it, how to slow down, how to do breathing and mindfulness and thought challenging and all of those things to calm and soothe your nervous system. Looking at polyvagal techniques. And to lastly remember that you need to explore emotions and your feelings when you're right or wrong, and challenge that thinking, and to replace name calling and that intense perfectionism with things like, I'm not bad or stupid, I'm an imperfect human being, and all human beings are imperfect, right? So to really begin to lean in to challenge those patterns. And we're going to talk more about this concept and how it plays out in relationships the rest of this week. So thank you so much for being here. I hope you found this video helpful. Please stay safe and well, and I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.